Hello, welcome to week 4. We wrapped up phonetics last week, and this week we are no longer talking about the articulatory descriptions of sounds. We are now moving on to phonology, the organization of sounds. You need to know phonetics in order to start phonology. If you're not confident in your knowledge of phonetics, please rewatch the videos for the past 2 weeks before proceeding. Phonology is the study of the organization of speech sounds in a language. In phonology, we study how sounds function and how they are distributed. We learned how to do transcriptions last week when we went over phonetics. However, when we did our transcriptions, we actually ignored some tiny details. One example is aspiration, the puff of air that comes out of your mouth. For example, put your hand in front of your mouth. Now say the word stall. You shouldn't feel a puff of air coming out when you say the T sound in stall. However, now say the word tall. You should feel a puff of air coming out. This puff of air is called aspiration. The T in tall is an aspirated T. The T in stall is unaspirated. And that's why you don't feel a puff of air. Even though the two T's sound different, English speakers perceive them as being the same. In other words, in a native speaker's mind, these two sounds are the same sound. However, now consider aspirated P and aspirated T. Paw and tall clearly sound different, and native speakers perceive aspirated P and aspirated T as different sounds. The situation is fairly similar to what we have on this slide. The boy in the leftmost picture and the boy in the middle are clearly the same person, just wearing different clothes. We perceive them as being the same. Now the bigger boy on the rightmost picture is clearly a different person. We perceive him as being different. Now, how do we really confirm that the boys in the first two pictures are really the same person and the boy in the last picture is a different boy? This idea of the same versus not the same is called contrastiveness. That's what we will study in our phonology segment of this class. If native speakers perceive two sounds, like an aspirated T and aspirated T, as being the same, we say that these two sounds are non-contrastive. If native speakers perceive two sounds, like P and T, as different, we say that they are contrastive. Another way to confirm whether two sounds are contrastive or non-contrastive is to ask ourselves whether the sounds function to distinguish meaning. If they distinguish meaning, they are contrastive. If they do not distinguish meaning, they are non-contrastive. Let's talk more about what I mean by distinguishing meaning. Sounds are contrastive if interchanging them can change the meaning of a word. For example, if you replace the P in the word lap with a B sound, you get a new word with an entirely new meaning. Therefore, P and B are contrastive. They are perceived as different by native speakers. T and flap are not contrastive in English. You can say the word kitty with an actual T sound, or you can say kitty with a flap. Replacing the flap with a T will not change the meaning. However, contrastiveness is language specific. Even though T and flap are non-contrastive in English, meaning that native speakers perceive them as being the same sound, they are contrastive in Spanish. In Spanish, replacing a T with a flap will give us an entirely new word with a different meaning. Native speakers of Spanish see T and flap as different sounds, just like how English speakers see P and B as different sounds. Another example of contrastiveness being language-specific is aspirated P and unaspirated P. In English, you can choose to not aspirate the final P sound in the word lap, so you can say lap. Or you can choose to aspirate it, lap. This change in aspiration causes no meaning change, and therefore, unaspirated P and aspirated P are non-contrastive to English speakers. They are perceived to be the same sound. In Cantonese, however, this change of aspiration can cause a meaning change. For example, pao with the aspirated P means to throw, and bao with the unaspirated P means to rap. They are contrastive in Cantonese, and Cantonese speakers think that these two sounds cannot be more different. We can now use this diagnostic of swapping sounds to determine whether two sounds are contrastive or non-contrastive. To do this, we need minimal pairs. Minimal pairs are words with the same number of sounds that differ by a single sound in the same position and have different meanings. For example, some and sun differ by one sound only. The two words both have three sounds. M and N are both final consonants in both words. The two words mean different things, and therefore, we know that M and N are contrastive in English. Native speakers of English think that they are different sounds. Buck and bug show that k and g are contrastive. Messy and meshy show that s and sh are contrastive. In feel, fill, and fell, we have a minimal triplet. Again, the three words all have three sounds. They only differ by the vowel in the middle, and they all mean different things. Therefore, e, I, and e are contrastive in English. Native speakers of English perceive them as different. Let's do an exercise. Which of the following is a minimal pair? To do this, you must first transcribe all these words. Do not eyeball this exercise. You cannot rely on spelling. You must use IPA, so you have to transcribe everything in IPA. Please pause this video if you don't want to hear the answer right away. The answer is real and feel. We will go through all the choices first. Bear and bear sound the same. They are what we call homophones, words that have the same pronunciation. They are therefore not minimal pairs. Spot and stop differ by two sounds. That's not a minimal pair. Sings and sinks don't even have the same number of sounds. That's not a minimal pair. Real and feel both have three sounds. They differ by the initial sound only, and they have different meanings. That's a minimal pair, showing that R and F are contrastive in English. Here's another question. Which of the following word forms a minimal pair with the word BAM? Again, you cannot eyeball this. You must transcribe everything in IPA. If you don't wish to hear the answer immediately, please pause the video. The answer is damn. Mon and Ben differ with bam by two sounds. Pow and palm are entirely different, and palm has four sounds instead of three. One more question. Which of the following words show that M and N are contrastive in English? Again, transcribe everything in IPA. If you don't wish to hear the answer immediately, Please pause the video. The answer is B, man and nan. Ham and pan differ by two sounds. They are not a minimal pair. Cram and cream are indeed a minimal pair, but they do not show that M and N contrast. They show that A and E contrast, so be careful. Nun and Nan, again, show that and A contrast, but not M and N. Therefore, the answer is man and nan. When two sounds are contrastive, we say that they're in contrastive distribution. That means these two sounds can occur in the same phonetic environment. What do we mean by that? Consider all the minimal pairs that we talked about. For example, paw and taw. Both aspirated P and aspirated T occur word initially. They are followed by the same sound. They can appear in the exact same phonetic environment. What does it mean when two sounds are in contrastive distribution? First of all, it means that native speakers consider them as different. All of us have an abstract mental representation for a set of sounds that we perceive to be the same. We call that abstract mental representation phoneme. For example, P and T are perceived as different by native speakers, so they belong to different phonemes in English. We have different mental representations for the two sounds. As you can see, phonemes are surrounded by slashes. Now, under each mental representation, or phoneme, there is a set of sounds that we perceive to be the same. For example, we perceive unaspirated P and aspirated P as the same sound. We say that unaspirated P and aspirated P are different realizations of the same phoneme. They're called allophones. And as you can see, allophones are surrounded by brackets. Aspirated P and aspirated T are therefore contrastive sounds because they do not belong to the same mental representations. Native speakers do not consider them as being similar or the same. Here's a summary on contrastiveness. Sounds in a minimal pair contrast. They are unpredictable and must be learned, and they belong to different phonemes. A phoneme is an abstract mental representation of a set of sounds considered by native speakers to be the same sound. Phonemes serve to distinguish meaning. Allophones are the different phonetic realizations of a phoneme. Allophones of the same phoneme are non-contrastive. Allophones of the same phoneme are perceived to be the same by native speakers of the language. This is something that we'll focus on in part 2 of this lecture. This is the end of part 1. In part 2, we will talk about non-contrastiveness, also known as complementary distribution. This content is very abstract. Please make sure you keep up with the reading. See you later.